Hi there, welcome to Stories of a First Gen Latina Bolivian-American. I'm your host, Monica Andrea. Welcome to the second episode. We're going to talk about identity. Identity is one of the biggest and most impactful conversations we can have as first gens because it affects us so much. Identity of who we really are at our core. Many of us have lived back in the motherland, wherever that may be. For me, that's Cochabamba, Bolivia. And then living in an American, fully infused in the culture here in the American life. And not being able to really discern and identify myself as 100% American or 100% Bolivian. And so then there comes this like identity clash, identity issue that most folks go through, if not the majority of first generation individuals go through that, to include even biracial or like different cultures that come together in families, where you're being pulled from all sorts of directions and trying to find your place in society. I want to start with a story about the time that I realized that I had an identity issue, and then we'll talk about also fixed mindsets during that story. And this story is actually when I was a child. It was my first realization that I was different than most folks, and that realization was through a crush, an experience. So let me take you back to Abingdon Elementary School in Arlington, Virginia. And I was in the fourth grade. I was in Miss Braddock's fourth grade class. And I've been at Abingdon since the first grade. Before that, I was at a Montessori Hoffman Boston in Arlington. So my upbringing has been in the American culture. I mean, it's my Spanish speaking skills were almost nil, with the very, very basic toddler vocabulary that I did not further evolve. As long as I could communicate with my parents, with very, just lower grade vocabulary of brushing teeth and sanitary, actions and how was your day? It was great, or it was good. Very low level vocabulary skills when it came to Spanish. So my upbringing, my dominant language, I would say my first true language is really English. As you can hear, I don't really have an accent, more neutral accent. Most folks, both Spanish and English, can't tell where I'm from, just because it's a bit more neutral. And so in Abingdon Elementary School, I was in the fourth grade, and I had a crush on this guy. His name is Aaron, and he was new to the school. I had a huge crush on that boy, first crush ever. I realized that he did not feel the same for me. He actually gravitated towards another girl that looked like him. See, during this time, I did not know I was Latina. I didn't know that I came from a different culture. Because when you're children, that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, you're just playing games, you're exercising your imagination, you just want to be accepted, right? And so skin color, culture, background doesn't really matter. And as you're maturing, you begin to realize the differences, maybe even some influence from society and from home. In my situation, in this fourth grade, I had this crush, and that was the realization that he did not have a crush back on me. He was a blonde-haired, light-skinned Anglo boy. And the gal, named Lisa, also light-skinned, blonde hair, cute girl. I was really crushed because I thought that I could win him over and be friends. And I tried so hard and I was so shy, but yet I really wanted to be friends. And then I tried to approach it more in the tomboyish approach because I was very much a tomboy, believe it or not. It didn't work, and his energy gravitated towards her. And I thought, oh my gosh, like they look alike. They look so alike. And I'm different. I look different. I have a different color skin. I have dark hair, although you see blonde hair today, that's totally bleached. I had really dark hair, dark brown eyes, and darker skin. I realized that I was different, and I was different from him and different from her. And in my very immature, raw mind, I concluded that I needed to be with those that were more like me, that I wasn't going to be accepted by those that weren't like me. I also had a realization that the boys that did gravitate towards me, that liked me, and, you know, the little flirtatious and, oh, in the playground, that boy likes you or that girl likes you type of deal, it was Latino boys. It was Latino boys that 2 or 3 of them throughout the school, elementary school year and throughout middle school, were those, they gravitated towards me. And I thought, well, that's why, because I'm like them. And so then I made this like narrative in my head that we must be with those who are like us. And that really is the start of my identity crisis of really understanding, okay, gosh, I'm like being placed in this bucket, you know, involuntarily. Society has said, you know, you are in this bucket. This experience that I'm having is saying that you belong in this bucket. Obviously, I'm wrong, right? I was wrong during that time. I had what we call a fixed mindset. I bought into a very limited belief, a belief that I should only be with those that are like me. Well, fast forward through my dating years, my true dating years, you know, high school, college years, post-college, throughout my young adulthood life, I only dated people that looked like me, especially in the Bolivian community. Mind you, yes, I was very much infused in the Bolivian-American community here in Northern Virginia. Believe it or not, there's over 60,000 Bolivians here in Northern Virginia. We are the largest Bolivian population in the U.S. here in Northern Virginia. And naturally, I gravitated towards my culture. I danced in Bolivian folklore dancing called caporales. Eventually in San Simon, which was my first organization that I danced for, the first fraternity that I danced for. And so I met men, boys and men that are Bolivian-American. And I didn't leave that community because it felt like comfort. It felt like we are alike and we look alike and we have very similar experiences as far as culture and traditions. And it just felt very comfortable to be in that to an extent because I wasn't always 100% feeling like I fit in. My Spanish, like I mentioned earlier, was very much a toddler level vocabulary. I'm now a young adult, and my vocabulary is atrocious compared to where the other Bolivian adults of my age group, where their vocabulary stood. I also had a very heavy accent when I spoke in Spanish. And that separated me from the true Bolivians. We'll do that in quotes if you can't see me. The true Bolivians and those that were that hybrid. And obviously I gravitated towards those that were more of hybrid, that understood the American Bolivian culture. But I still wanted to hang with those that were Bolivian, 100% Bolivian, you know, infused in somewhat of the American, but they grew up in Bolivia. Unlike me, I was 3 years old when we came to live here in Northern Virginia, 3 going on 4. So my experience was very different from theirs, and how much infusion I had in the Bolivian culture, in the true motherland, right, experience, which is very different. I ended up marrying someone at the age of 18, also Bolivian, ended up remarrying someone else who ended up being the father of my oldest daughter. That was a longer relationship. This other one was very short-lived, more impulse type relationship with the marriage, and ended up divorcing a year and a half after the official marriage, so it didn't work out. But with my daughter's father, that was a longer term relationship, and that was a little bit more established, although unhealthy and a bit toxic for various reasons that we won't get into here, but we will eventually dive into as we talk more about relationships and melding into both cultures. Right, so my identity was very much just always kind of in the middle of the Bolivian bucket and the American bucket. And I knew I didn't fit perfectly in either of those. And I saw those that did fit perfectly in those, how they thrived, how they felt, how they acted, their brand. And I felt so different. I felt out of place. And it's always bothered me, right? It's always bothered through the years, through middle school, through high school, through college years, young adulthood. It always bothered me. I felt like I never really fit in. And I would get these very like passive aggressive comments of, oh, you're Monica? Oh, you don't have an accent. Or someone would talk to me in Spanish and I would reply back in English, and they would say, why aren't you speaking in Spanish? I'm like, because I'm embarrassed to talk in Spanish. My Spanish is horrific. My vocabulary is just so elementary level as an adult, and I'm embarrassed of the accent that I hold. And folks just didn't understand that, and they were offended if I didn't speak back in Spanish. And so with my broken Spanish, I did what I could. So through those years, it's always bothered me. But it really peaked its head when I went through postpartum depression. That's where just like everything unfolded. Like, talk about like feeling exposed, talk about feeling raw, and hitting that reset button. Only after I've realized I was in postpartum depression, I was having a really hard time, and I was clawing my way out of a huge hole I dug. And that's how I as a metaphor, that's what I use when I talk about depression. It feels like I'm just like digging a bigger hole the more I sulk, and how difficult it is, and how much I'm like clawing my way up. And it is like a roller coaster as well, because there are good days where you want to survive, that you want to get through the postpartum, but there are also days that feel like doom and gloom, and those are incredibly difficult. So when I had my daughter, I had a very difficult pregnancy, very difficult marriage, not a healthy marriage at all. Wasn't a strong partnership. It felt very transactional. That didn't feed, into any of the positivity during that beautiful phase of my life that should have been as a new mother in a marriage with my partner. And I ended up, getting into a really bad mental state and unstable state where I felt very doom and gloom. And I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. I was diagnosed with other things as well that just didn't even make sense to me, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So during this postpartum depression, I did a lot of soul searching to help in that survival mode. When I entered a survival mode, when I was trying to claw my way out of it, and I knew I wanted to get better, I knew I needed to get better for the sake of my daughter, for the sake of me, for the sake of my family, I had that identity crisis again. And I realized how much I didn't know myself, how much I was conforming in these buckets that we just talked about. I needed to fit. And so now there's a new bucket, and it's the Bolivian wife bucket. It's the Bolivian mother bucket. Because I married a Bolivian husband who expected a gourmet breakfast, who expected, all these things that the Bolivian culture teaches or has taught women to act like and be like. And I just didn't fit that mold. And I realized that I won't fit that mold because that's not who I am. Well, then who am I? Who the heck is Monica? During that time of trying to claw my way out of postpartum depression and realizing that I did not know who I was, I began to research and learn about more natural and holistic approaches to getting better. And I mention this a part of the identity piece because that's what helped me decipher and identify, re-identify with myself through the synchronization of the mind-body-spirit approach. That's where Mivia birthed originally, right? Mind, body, spirit also isn't, something new that I'm sure you've all heard in some point. Mind, body, soul, spirit, mind, body, spirit, heart. There's so many different types of, triads or very similar, approaches to wellness, where there's like the synchronicity of these elements, which I strongly believe in. But I realize it's like my mind is a hot mess. I have limiting beliefs. I have a fixed mindset. I don't know who I am. My body is a mess. I just went through a very traumatic physical issue. I had a massive cyst alongside my daughter while she was growing, and my pregnancy hormone was feeding the cyst. It was one of the largest pregnancy cysts that doctors have seen in the Fairfax County area. I was studied, I was looked at, I was measured, it was like definitely, I felt like I was being watched every 2 weeks just in case something happened. And then I went into surgery once I gave birth to a premature baby. At 35 weeks, she weighed 5 pounds, and they had to wheel me directly into a full-blown surgery to reconstruct my ovary because the cyst grew in my ovary. So physically, I was a mess. I just had a baby. Physically, right, it takes 1 year to 2 years to heal again after such a massive transformation in your body of creating another human. And I wasn't eating right, so my body was a mess. I was bloated, I was gassy, I had so many cravings. I was not healthy, I was dehydrated. So my body took a toll, so my mind, my body, and my spirit, I felt lost. I didn't connect anywhere. I grew up Catholic, but it wasn't resonating with me, the religion side. It never really did. I learned it and I know about it and I appreciate the traditions, but it never really resonated for my heart. I had a different calling towards something a little bit more broad and a little bit more natural, in the sense that I wanted to connect without having to go through a church, go through, a priest, go through a methodical process, right, of doing things. I felt like there was something more natural that I could do to connect spiritually with the universe's energy, with God, with, things that I believed in. And I had not any connection with any of that during this time. And so I knew that I needed to heal that side. And I also needed to come to terms with what it is that will fill this spiritual void that I have. So mind, body, spirit was all over the place. That's how I was able to get into a place of at least planning to re-identify, reconnect with Monica. I'll tell you something that I say this to my children, I say this to my husband, I say this to anyone that I speak to when it comes to personal development. If you aren't centered, grounded, and synchronized, most often, right, the 80-20 rule, you won't be synchronized 24/7 at 100% rate. It just, mind, body, spirit, it's sometimes unsustainable because life things, experiences, work, stressors, right? That we all face. Those challenges happen, and then one comes unbalanced and for a short period of time, and then you try to resynchronize. But at an 80-20 rule, where 80% of the time you intentionally work on yourself to synchronize the mind, body, spirit, there is a sense of peace, fulfillment that folks love. And I say that to folks because you have to find whatever that is that fills the mind, the body, and the spirit that's best for you and your wellness. Because if you're not well, your family isn't well. Your friends won't be well around you. Your community, you can't give back in a positive and impactful way to your community. If you aren't synchronized, if you yourself haven't reached a level of peace, of wellness for yourself, of fulfillment, of life fulfillment for yourself, it's going to be incredibly difficult to be at your best as a mother, as a father, as a coworker, as a leader, as a community member. When something's off, it shows. And it shows up in stressful situations. It shows up in relationships. It shows up in places and times sometimes that we have no control over. And then we have these realizations of, oh my gosh, there's something going on that I have not been paying attention to. Identity is right in the middle of that. If you look at the triangle, right, the Mivia triad of wellness triangle, the mind, body, and spirit, in the middle is you. It's your identity. It's your brand. It's how you show up in the world. It's what you're defining for you. For me, for mind is invigorating conversations, learning, meditating to help calm my mind, because my mind is all over the place all the time. And I have all sorts of thoughts and ideas that get overwhelming, that become so overwhelming. So meditation is very important to me. Quiet time, music to help settle the mind. Body, I love walking. I love dancing. Dancing is such a passion of mine. I'm in my best happy place when I am dancing. I love water. I hydrate like no other. And that's where I keep myself and centered in my body. And I'm more conscious in what I'm eating, less processed, more greens, more fruits, more fiber, more protein. And spirit, I connect with the universe's power and energy for myself, whatever you believe in, however you connect spiritually, and what you believe in, the hope, the love, the compassion, the understanding that we're all taught throughout life is that spiritual side as well. And again, you define that, but you take it a step further and you define your brand. You define how you want to show up. So take an action and jot down a few sentences, a paragraph, a page, whatever your mind and body drives you to do. Jot down what you want to be when you grow up. Who do you want to see yourself be and accomplish? What does that level of success look like for you? What are you most proud of? If you were like, if I had a magic wand today, this is what life would look like. This is what life would feel like. This is what life would be like every day, a day in the life of you. What would that be? Is it material? Is it spiritual? Is it physical? Is it position? Is it power? What is that for you? And once you've taken that, align it to morals, ethics, align it to what is love and compassion and empathy, and see what comes out of that formula. what can we manifest here in this sheet of paper as we're writing down what we want to be when we grow up and what our successes look like? That is your North Star. If you are someone right now who is like, I just want to find a stable job, and then the rest will come. Right now, my motivation, I just want a stable job. Or if you're a student, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to study. I don't know where I'm headed. I just need guidance, and I just need to know where I'm at. What am I going to choose as far as my major so that I can deploy out into a good career that I'm going to love and enjoy? And so then the paper would say, successful professional with, the academia to be successful in that profession. Something like that. So it's your North Star. And this is the most simplistic way of identifying what it is that you want to look like and have that be your North Star. And everything between that North Star and you is going to be, for sure, a journey. Because that journey is going to look very different for all, especially for us as first generation individuals, minorities. That's going to look very different for us. And sometimes the path that we pave, we have to break through traditions, we have to break through culture, we have to break through conforming to whatever bucket or box that we've been placed in, and taking some back roads, different paths. I met someone the other day that did not arrive and migrate into the US until their young adulthood. And they had these amazing thoughts about what their future is going to look like. But they kept saying, well, I can't because I don't have this, I don't have that, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I said, that sounds very fixed. It sounds very limiting. And when something's not serving us to reach our goals and become that successful individual that we define, because we define success, not society, not family, not your husband, wife, partner, brother, sister, but you define success. And I said, what does that success look like for you? And how can we get there? And let's shift that mindset from a fixed, limited belief that's not serving us to a growth mindset. A fixed mindset are folks that believe that they have not been born with the talent and abilities to accomplish whatever goal or success or dream that they have. The growth mindset individuals are those that say, yeah, I can do it, or I haven't done it yet, but I will, the power of yet. I will do it. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to figure it out. And they have grit and resilience and persistence. And they end up achieving and seeing things through to the end, no matter how hard it can be. They have their eye on the prize. And they're willing to learn and grow and even look foolish sometimes if needed to get to that place and learn. So remember that when we are re-identifying, reconnecting with oneself, that you watch out consciously about that fixed mindset and see how you can turn it into a growth mindset. I had a very fixed mindset when I was in postpartum depression, and I knew I needed to leave the marriage I was in because it was not serving my wellness. It wasn't serving my mind, body, or spirit. And I knew that I wanted to be the best mother for my daughter, and I couldn't do it in that environment. My fixed mindset was, I don't want to divorce and fail again. But I knew I had to. But my fixed mindset stopped me from making that decision. For almost 2 years, a little less than 2 years, it just percolated in my mind. I knew that was the best decision to make, but I couldn't do it because my fixed mindset kept saying, you're going to have the plaque divorcee on the top of your head, and you're going to end up as a failure, failed marriage, failed mother, failed everything. So that's a very difficult fixed mindset to be in. I pulled myself out of it because then I weighed what it was that was best for my daughter and me. Was it fixed? No, because that was limiting us, our future, our success, or my future success even in my career as a mother and as an individual. That marriage was not serving me anymore, and I wasn't serving the marriage anymore myself. I had checked out. I had checked out when I went into postpartum depression. So don't let those limiting beliefs and the traditions of not divorcing stop you from moving into your growth mindset and finding yourself to re-identify and reconnect. So I hope you take the action, redefining you if you're having a hard time with identity. Jot down what your North Star can be, and we'll continue this conversation as how to get there, because this is all about personal development. This is all about achievements that are defined by you. This is all about meeting your potential as a first-gen minority so others can stand on your shoulders. Your children, your family, your friends, your community can stand on our shoulders and move on up. All right. We'll see you next time. It was so great to have you all here. Bye.